Greetings friends, Dragon here once again. If it's your first time finding the channel, then do please remember to click that red button and subscribe. Okay, as promised, we're now going to get into a proper deep dive review for the first disc from the Shawscope Volume 1 box set, which is King Boxer, marked on the review discs as disc A. It's probably going to be disc 1 when you actually get the box set through in December. Very appropriate that we're jumping into this today on this day, which is Monday, November the 8th, as this is the day that 88 Films put out Jimmy Wang Yu's The Chinese Boxer, and these two films are very much kindred spirits. An awful lot of similarities between the two in terms of story. They share an awful lot of the same cast. Chinese Boxer came first by about 2 years. It was in 1970, and if it's one that you've tracked down or one that you're going to track down before you get the Arrow Shawscope set, it will give you a very good idea of what to expect from King Boxer. It's kind of like a low-fat version of King Boxer. They, like I say, do share an awful lot of the same themes, the same iron palm technique. There is an awful lot more kind of nuance and depth in King Boxer. Chinese Boxer is a little bit more straightforward and simplistic. By no means less good. I consider them both excellent movies, and both ones that, if you enjoy classic kung fu movies, you'll certainly enjoy both. But getting into today into King Boxer, and we're going to mostly check out really the disc itself. I think that's the main thing that people are going to be curious about. So the special features, what the quality of the transfer is like, all that sort of good stuff. I don't want to ruin the movie for people who haven't seen it. If you're excited to get the box set and you've not seen the films before, then I certainly don't want to spoil that. So I'll speak a little bit about the overall kind of some of the plot points, but I'm certainly not going to give any spoilers away. I think it's one that everyone should be able to enjoy for the first time. Directed in 1972 by a South Korean director, by Chung Chang-wha, sometimes referred to as his sort of adopted Chinese name as Chung Chang-wha, and really was made as Shaw Brothers' direct response to the success of Bruce Lee, really. So this was Shaw Brothers' response to Fist of Fury. Fist of Fury, in turn, was kind of almost a response to the Chinese Boxer. They certainly all explore an awful lot of the same themes. The Japanese predominantly are the villains in all three movies, but there's kind of various differences in how the heroes kind of respond to that task in the various films. And in this case, our hero is Lo Lieh, who many people may know mostly as a villain. He's present elsewhere in the box set in the Spectacular Executioners from Shaolin, playing Pa Mei, and was originally, I believe, set to play that role for Quentin Tarantino in Kill Bill. Unfortunately, Lo Lieh passed away, and so Gordon Liu stepped up and took the part for Kill Bill Part 2. But yeah, Lo Lieh here playing a hero. Not the only time he played a hero, and also not the only time that he'd worked with that director. They previously made Valley of the Fangs together. But this is the movie that features the Ironside / Kill Bill audio sting. This one, which was originally actually from the Ironside TV show written by Quincy Jones. Hopefully we'll get away with playing a couple of seconds of it for the purpose of letting you hear the sound. But a lot of people think of that as being the Kill Bill audio sting. It's really, in my mind, is the King Boxer sting. And we see that every time his hands glow red with its iron palm technique that he learns as a course of the movie. So essentially, without giving you too much details, but Lo Lieh is a student of an aging master. The master very nearly gets beaten up by a gang, kind of young thugs, who he is able to beat off, but realizes that he's kind of getting to the end of his usefulness and decides that his pupil will be better served going over to visit and train with a younger master, because there's an approaching martial arts tournament, and whoever wins the tournament will effectively take control of the region. So they kind of want somebody noble, or one of the noble schools, to take control rather than kind of one of the more villainous, shady, slightly dodgy criminal schools, of which there is one that is our kind of main antagonists for the movie. So Lo Lieh is dispatched to go and train with this new master. On the way, saves a nightclub singer from that villainous school's thugs. She kind of falls for him. We'll get back to that later. He already is betrothed to his aging master's daughter, with the idea that they're going to get married if he wins the tournament. So he heads back, starts training with the new teacher, and starts very quickly falling foul of the villainous gang, who have brought in some Japanese talent to kind of help them really manipulate the situation. And as things progress with slightly tragic results, Lo Lieh ultimately has to learn the iron palm technique so that he can compete in the tournament, and then he has to deal with the fallout of the various villainous antics of the evil school and the duplicitous tactics of one of his big brothers at the school that he's studying at, who's jealous that he has been the one who's been taught the iron palm technique. That's about all I want to say. Action-wise, it's pretty packed. Choreography in the film is exceptional. It's by Lau Kar-leung's brother, Lau Kar-wing, and it's really kind of a cut above an awful lot of the kind of Shaw's movies from this era in terms of hand-to-hand combat. And the Chinese Boxer's a little bit more bombastic in places. Wang Yu was quite an inventive director, but maybe not quite as good a martial artist as Lo Lieh. So I would say that the choreography in this is a little bit better than in Chinese Boxer, but Chinese Boxer is very, very good fun. They're both slightly different movies in that regard as when it comes down to the action, but they kind of handle the iron palm in slightly different ways, but the training sequences are certainly pretty similar. The cast is fantastic. Like I say, an awful lot of the cast are in both movies, but Lo Lieh in the chief role as our hero is the character named Chang Cheh. His love interest in the movie, the daughter of his original master, is played by Wang Ping. The big brother that he has, his jealous big brother at his new kung fu school, is played by a South Korean actor called James Nang. The main chief villain is played by Tian Feng. We have a nightclub singer being played by Wang Cheng Feng, and we also have a somewhat conflicted villain who's not actually, villain's maybe too strong a word. We have a conflicted Mongolian martial artist who kind of really is adopted by the bad gang quite early on, but kind of sees the error of his ways through the film, has a bit of a change of heart. He is played by Chin Chi Chu, his character called Chen Lang, and he's really pretty cruel in the movie. There's a couple of kind of great fights between him and Lo Lieh before he's had a change of heart. We also get a cameo by Lo1 playing a street hustler, really a kind of very strong martial artist who they're taking on all comers, and our Mongolian fighter is able to kind of beat him pretty easily to kind of show the power of our Mongolian fighter of Chen Lang. But it's nice seeing Lo1 in a Shaw Brothers movie quite early on. Music, we've mentioned briefly the Ironside Kill Bill sting, but the rest of the music actually by Wu Ta Chang and written specifically for the film, which was quite rare for Shaw Brothers movies. Usually they would use library music. Wu Ta Chang was King Hu's principal composer, did the music for most of King Hu's films, and does a great job here. The music's really pretty well done. The script also really quite multi-layered, written by Cheng Yang in collaboration with the director, who did kind of effectively focus groups. He spoke to an awful lot of Chinese kids, people who would be most likely to go and see the movie, and tried to kind of find out what elements they would most like to see. And so they kind of workshopped the script together. And so it is a lot more nuance than you would see from an awful lot of the other Kung Fu movies. There's kind of fantasy sequences of sorts where you kind of see through the eyes of Lo Lieh's original teacher's daughter, through Wang Ping. You kind of see her fantasies about the two of them finding love and being able to settle down together, and sort of various points they also use black and white sequences for flashbacks and to kind of highlight when one character is remembering something that's happened in the past. It's kind of quite inventive, an awful lot of kind of techniques that we don't often see from other Hong Kong based directors. The director Chung Chang-wha had already made quite a few films in South Korea before he came over to make films in Hong Kong, and brings a slightly different sensibility than you would see from really the Hong Kong movies of the same era. So he's packed an awful lot into the film narratively. It runs for quite long. It's about an hour and 45 minutes. This is a brand new 2K restoration from a 4K scan of the original negative by RR themselves. It looks very good. Between the two, I would say that the Chinese Boxer maybe looks slightly brighter, sharper and crisper. I'm not too sure what the state of the original negative that they had for King Boxer is, but you'll certainly see grain in places, but not in a way that gets in the way for me. I never mind seeing grain. These were all movies that were shot on film stock, and particularly in the night sequences, I think an awful lot of it is down to the way that it was shot in the day. At this particular point in time, it was not uncommon for Shaws to change cinematographers on their directors midway through the film. And so I suspect it's maybe been 2 or 3 different people doing the cinematography for the film. So there's a slight shift in certain places. Some of the shots not that consistent, but when it's looking at its best, it looks fantastic, and when it looks at its worst, it by no means looks bad. It's just a case of you notice the grain a bit more. It's a little bit less consistent of a print overall, as you'll see in the Chinese Boxer. But really where this excels is in its special features, and part of the reason why it's taken me a while to get through this review is because there's 5 hours of special features on this disc. A huge amount of it, I think, is not just relating specifically to the King Boxer, so kind of speaks a lot about Shaw Brothers as a studio in itself. But we get a commentary by David Desser, who is the author of a book called The Journal of Japanese and Korean Cinema and the Cinema of Hong Kong. I think a university lecturer as well. His commentary is pretty good. It's fairly academic, but not too heavy-handed, and he loves Western comparisons, so he likes a lot to refer to this as the Eastern Western, or the first Eastern Western, which I think was a tagline from one of the posters, but he spends an awful lot of time in the commentary comparing this to the Western Shane. I don't maybe completely agree with his chain of thought on that one, but that's certainly the road that he goes down. But that's by no means to diminish his commentary, because he's got an awful lot of great facts and great information about the film, and it's a really listenable, really well put together commentary. So there's maybe a couple of places where I would slightly disagree with him, but overall it's a great commentary, and it's a really kind of great strong start for the extras. We also get a few bits and pieces from the Frédéric Ambroisine library, or the archives. Frédéric Ambroisine has interviewed almost everybody that he can get in contact with from Shaw Brothers from back in the day, and most of the archived interviews all come from his incredible resource. So we get a pretty long interview with the director, with Chung Chang-wha, runs for about 39 minutes, and this is split over 2 different sessions, I think from 2003 and 2004, and he speaks a lot about his introduction into working with Shaws, what it was like for him making King Boxer, what it was like for him putting the film together, and ultimately why he chose to leave Shaw's, because this was his last film for Shaw Brothers. He then decamped and went over to the very newly formed Golden Harvest and worked at Golden Harvest in the years that followed. And I don't want to spoil the reasons for that. You can enjoy that when you listen to his interview. We also get a separate interview with the star Wang Ping. She's playing the daughter of Lo Lieh's original master and Lo Lieh's love interest in the movie. Her interview runs for about 25 minutes and really, again, that does a good job of explaining how she got into working with Shaw's and a little bit of what it was like for her to work on the film. The last of the Frédéric Ambrosine interviews comes from Cho Young-jung, runs for about 33 minutes. Cho Young-jung worked for the Busan Film Festival, who did a retrospective of Chung Chang-wha's work. And so she wrote quite an extensive, you call it a mini book, to go in collaboration with the season that they were running at the film festival, called Chung Chang-wha Man of Action. And so she speaks for about 33 minutes about her work on that retrospective, the fact that it was one of her first for the film festival, so one that she considers very special to her, and she deep dived into his movie, so she speaks a lot about his career as a whole. Fascinating, really, really good. And then the best one for me in terms of the interviews on here is a newly created interview with Tony Raines, which runs for about 42 minutes and is an incredibly effective introduction to the Shaw Brothers studio. So he speaks about the history of Shaw's, how they formed, how they started. Does end up coming to a point of speaking about the King Boxer, but there's so much more in it. Tony Raines is a rock star when it comes to these sorts of things, does a huge amount of supplemental material for Criterion. He's also, I believe, one of the programmers for not just the London Film Festival, but also the Busan Film Festival, and has done also the Toronto, one of the Canadian film festivals, I'm pretty sure it's Toronto, but has been a champion of East Asian cinema for a long, long time, and really an incredible resource of knowledge about not just Hong Kong cinema, Korean cinema and Japanese cinema too. So once you fall down the Tony Raines rabbit hole, don't be surprised if you're searching out more and more of his interviews and his commentaries. He's quite a legend, and this was no exception. It's a tremendous, great start to the set, really. But that's not all we get. We also get a Cinema Hong Kong documentary. They described this on the back of the box as being part one of a 3-part documentary, which made me think it was going to be small snippets, but it's really not. This is the full 50-minute documentary that I'd previously seen. I didn't actually know there was 2 other parts to this documentary, produced in collaboration with Celestial Films, and speaks to everybody. So you get extensive footage from Lau Garlong, including on-set, behind-the-scenes footage from his film Drunken Monkey. So I suspect this was made about the 2003 mark. But we get interviews with Jackie Chan, with Jet Li, with Sammo Hung, with John Woo, with a host of other choreographers and behind-the-scenes talent. The choreographer from a lot of Chang Cheh's movies, the man who put together all the animal styles for the 5 Venoms is in here, along with countless others. Loads of archive footage and loads of kind of talking head clips. It's a fantastic documentary. Like I say, it runs for about 50 minutes, and for me is one of the highlights of the special features on this first disc. I hope as these box sets continue, if we see a volume 2 and a volume 3, they'll give us the other parts of that documentary. We'll have to wait and see. And then the special features are rounded out by 8 trailers and a photo gallery. Normally photo galleries can be a little bit hit or miss. This one's fantastic. It kind of puts together not just some stills from the film, but also all the promotional posters from the different regions. The film is released under a few different names. So I know it as King Boxer. My American friends will know this as 5 Fingers of Death. The Mandarin name is Jianxia Diye Chuan. So I think you see posters for all of these different versions. Incidentally, it was also released in South Korea as Iron Man. But really, as a first entry into the set, it's hard to imagine how they could have done a better job on this. We get both the Mandarin and the English dubs on here. Will sound incredible. Like I say, the print overall does, to me, look fantastic. If you're expecting to see no grain, be a bit disappointed. I don't think you should be, because the only way to really eliminate that is to use a whole bunch of like HDR smoothing and kind of motion blurring to try and smooth out any grain. It always looks really unnatural and forced. So don't be put off by the fact that in the night scenes particularly, you will see a little bit of grain on the print. It is a film from 1972. That is to be expected. It's not going to get in the way. For me, it looks exceptional, sounds exceptional. It's a great movie and a fantastic first start to the box set. I'm very excited to get into Disc B or Disc 2, which will be the box of Shantung, the first Chang Cheh movie on the set. But for the first outing, it's fantastic. Really starts the set off very strong. Part of the reason I suspect they started with this one, because Shaw's certainly made movies before 1972, but this was one of the first films to really conquer America. So it was the first Hong Kong movie to reach #1 at the box office in 1973. It was the highest grossing movie until it was beaten by Enter the Dragon, but I think for a long time remained the second highest grossing Hong Kong movie in the States. The one that kind of kickstarted the craze of hand-to-hand combat, certainly in America, started the kind of craze for people wanting to see more more and more martial arts movies. And Shaw's were able to really kind of preempt the release of the two big Bruce Lee movies in the West by getting this to market first. So it kind of, to a lot of people, it came before The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, certainly at the cinemas. This was released before they were able to get a chance to see those. But highly, highly, highly recommended. I suspect if you're watching this, you're going to be getting the set anyway. So I'm very happy to report that your first experience of the set is going to be a very good one. It's a great place to start, and the movies, in my mind, just get better and better as we go on through the set. So I'm very excited for you all to get your hands on the box set, as I'm excited myself to get my hands on the box and see what the book and the packaging and so forth is like. But certainly for the film itself and for the disc and for the contents on it, absolutely 10 out of 10. Tremendous start. Join me again, hopefully later this week, for the disc 2. I'm going to try and get out all of the individual discs before the box set gets released next month. So hopefully this should work out as being about 2 discs a week, if I do my maths right. So yeah, join me towards the end of the week and we'll get into the BOXER from Shantung. Thank you very much for watching. Any questions or comments, let me know in the comments section below, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.